going on, MMA fans? I'm back to do a video to go over the issues of the UFC and also the heavyweight rankings. I was asked by Karsten, the MMA analyst, to come on and do this video. He'll also be, after I do my video, he's going to be posting a video up with his thoughts on these subjects. Kind of a collaborative effort. And kind of the reason behind this video is, if you haven't seen Karsten's review video of UFC 91, you know, he really ran into some topics that we've talked about in the past. I know I've talked about in videos in the past about fighters pay, the way the UFC is, you know, made itself look to the casual fan and to fans everywhere of MMA that the UFC is MMA. The way Dana White has treated fighters, the way that fighters have left the UFC because of not getting, you know, fair contracts, fair cuts of what they're worth as a fighter. So these are all things that have really caused us. So I'm going to go into that, and I'm also going to go into the rankings for the heavyweight division, not only of the UFC, but MMA. So let me get into this, and I'll talk about a couple of the things. First of all, fighters that have been drawn into the UFC, that have been interested in the UFC. Joachim Hansen, perfect example, was making $40,000 to show, $40,000 to win in Pride. Now, keep in mind, Joachim Hansen now is the winner of the Dream lightweight tournament, even though Eddie Alvarez was not able to compete. Joachim Hansen has always been a top-tier lightweight. Coming to the UFC told him, okay, we'll consider you, but we're going to cut your contract in half. His existing Pride contract, we're going to cut it in half. We're going to give you 20. 20 to show, 20 to win. Now, some of these guys that they've done this to, another perfect example, Hayato Sakurai, same thing. You've had guys that were interested in coming into the UFC, you know, with Fedor. Fedor was a different situation, though, because of the Sambo. Me personally, you know, I look at Sambo as it's no different than Abu Dhabi, going and being in a grappling competition. But when it's combat Sambo, you know, it's a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more, you run a higher risk of getting injured. So, you know, there's some things there that, you know, I kind of see and then I kind of don't, because, come on. You can't sit there and let guys go grapple in Abu Dhabi and then tell the guy he can't go grapple and do Sambo in his home country. And then, of course, you know, not being able to compete against other fighters. That I can understand, because they don't want the guy getting hurt. They don't want to, you know, risk anything happening. But what this comes down to is the UFC's always had this propensity to really downplay fighters that really are, you know, worth what they are. And unfortunately, we've seen this. We've seen heavyweights leave the heavyweight division. Andre Arlovski, Fabricio Verdum, Tim Sylvia, Randy Couture, Andre Arlovski. I mean, these are all guys that are top heavyweights. And, you know, look at the top 10 now, and you can see that you've lost a couple guys that were really, you know, making that division. The other thing that we run into a lot with the UFC is Dana White has always put this image out that the UFC is MMA. Now, in some of these situations where these promotions, and I'll explain, let me explain this first. Dana's had this tombstone, and I don't know if you've watched any of his blogs. Go to the UFC website. He puts on there of who, you know, he's driven out of business. Now, of course, yes, some of these MMA organizations have done this to themselves by the way they've been corrupt and the way they've dealt with things, and I don't excuse that. But for the comments of Dana White to sit there and say, I'm the Grim Reaper mother, that is just going to show that, sit back and look at this and really ask yourself when I bring this forward, is this guy really out for MMA, or is he out to be a business? Now, there's nothing wrong with being a business. Dana White's in it to make money. The Fertitta brothers are in it to make money. But is this guy really out for MMA like he says he is? He sits there and he says that he doesn't want to see Kimbo Slice brought into Elite XC and, you know, put out for all the casual fans to see, and a freak show, and to bring him in with no experience in MMA, and he's only had a couple fights. Well, really, what's the difference with Brock Lesnar? Granted, Brock Lesnar, wrestling experience, does have some experience as far as wrestling is concerned. Kimbo Slice, not so much. But in the terms of MMA, neither one of these guys have had the experience to be in MMA. So really, in a sense, Dana White, in times, is hypocritical. And they really have promoted this image that the UFC is MMA, which is something that, unfortunately, I hear it all the time. I went to the sports bar to watch UFC 91, and people, I talked to a couple people that I've seen there before, and they know nothing about these other organizations. Why? Because they believe the UFC is MMA. And that's sad. It really is sad, because the UFC is not the only organization out there. So those are my thoughts on that subject. Hopefully I went a little in depth about that. I want to talk about heavyweights and the heavyweight rankings. I'm going to go over the MMA heavyweight rankings, and then I'm going to go into the UFC heavyweight rankings. At number 10, I have Gabriel Gonzaga. The wins over Dustin McCauley, wins over Josh Hendricks, moves him into number 10. Number 9, Fabricio Verdum, wins over Alexander Emelianenko. The list goes on for him. At number 8, I have Brock Lesnar, winning the UFC heavyweight title. Just because you win a title, and I've said this many times, and I've had this discussion with many people, does not make you the number one person in the world. You have to have a string of wins, and you have to beat top-tier competition. Perfect example, when Matt Serra beat George St. Pierre, how many fights did he have at 170 that would consider him to be the number one welterweight in the world? He didn't. So, I always disagree with that just because you hold a belt, that doesn't mean that you're the best fighter in the world. Guys that hold belts in other organizations, that doesn't make them the best fighter in the world. And the UFC is no different. You haven't fought the best fighters, you don't deserve to have that number one spot. At number 7, if I didn't mention this, number 8, Brock Lesnar. Number 7, Alistair Overeem. His fight with Mirko Cro Cop being a no contest. The fight with Gary Goodridge. He's so much better at heavyweight. He gasses at 205. Definitely a lot better at heavyweight. Moving on to number 6, Ben Rothwell. Even though he lost to Andre Arlovski, he's got a fight coming up with Pedro Hizzo. He's got some, impressive wins over the course of his last couple fights. Number 5, Tim Sylvia. Still being one of the top guys. Wins over Andre Arlovski. He's just recently fought Fedor. He beat Brandon Vera. The list goes on. Josh Barnett comes in at number 4. No surprise there. Number 3, Andre Arlovski. No surprise there. Wins over Tim Sylvia, Vladimir Machashenko. The list goes on for him. Ben Rothwell, Roy Nelson. Number 2, Antonio Rodrigo Nogueira, Big Nog, comes in at number 2. No surprise why he's there. And at number 1, again, this is not a surprise either, Fedor Emelianenko. Alright, moving on to the UFC heavyweights. At number 10, I have Anthony Hardonk with his wins over Eddie Sanchez and Colin Robinson. At number 9, I have Cain Velasquez with his wins over Jake O'Brien and Brad Morris. And, of course, these are their last 2 fights. At number 8, Junior Dos Santos with the vicious knockout of Fabricio Verdum. Number 7, Shane Carwin, wins over Neil Wayne, Kristen Lalish, and Carlton Jones. Number 6, Chet Congo, wins over Suario Silva, Mirko Cro Cop, and Dan Evanson. Number 5, Randy Couture, wins over Gonzaga, wins over Tim Sylvia. At number 4, Gabriel Gonzaga, Hendricks, McCulley, Mirko Cro Cop. Number 3, Frank Mir, wins over Brock Lesnar and Anthony Hardonk. Number 2, Brock Lesnar, beating Heath Herring and Randy Couture. And at number 1, Antonio Rodrigo Nogueira, beating Tim Sylvia and Heath Herring, and of course his wins in the past. His wins in the UFC being Sylvia and Herring. I was going to say in the past, but that's MMA heavyweight ranking. So, nonetheless, let me know what you think. Leave me some comments, constructive, negative, positive. Look out for Karsten's video. He will be doing a video on the same subject with his thoughts, the way he looks at this subject. Hopefully I stayed as unbiased as possible. I know there were some things that I looked at biasly, but this subject, you may not agree with it. You may agree, you may disagree, but this is just one look at it. There were some things that I talked about that I tried to stay unbiased about, like the Joachim Hellboy Hansen situation, which did happen. So nonetheless, like I said, leave me some comments, constructive, negative, positive. And on that note, you guys, have a great day.